Okay, two things. Firstly, I'm not going to talk about happiness at work. Secondly, I'm going to talk about something totally different from how it was introduced. When Monica first called me, she asked me to come and speak. And because Monica is a wonderful person, I said, yes, I'll come and speak. Because my colleagues know I'm neither an expert at happiness, nor do I very often go to work. So what I'm going to do today is share with you some of my learnings in my life, and I'll share with you a little bit of my life story, and maybe you'll have something to take home from there. I always say we share this one earth, but we live in 7.5 billion different worlds. So I will give you a perspective today and the learnings that I have from my world. So I was born and raised in New Delhi, India, where I spent the first 24 years of my life. Then I went to France. I did my master's in hotel administration. I worked for the Intercontinental, for Meridian, then for Hyatt, different hotel companies. I finally ended up in West Africa, Liberia, for a little over 3.5 years as general manager of a hotel. And this was before I came to Prague in early 1991, nearly 26 years ago. However, if somebody asked me 26 years ago, and somebody told me that you are going to be in Prague, and you are going to spend the next 25 or 30 or more years in Prague, and you are going to have 4 children who are going to be Czech, and your first wife is going to be Russian, and your second wife is going to be Czech, and you're going to be divorced twice, and you're going to do all these different things, I would have never believed that. And firstly, I would have jumped to a map to check, because at that point in time, I did not probably know exactly where Prague was. Coming down this road in the last 26 years, the one thing that I have learned is that change, we try to control our lives, and we try to hold on to some of the things that we have. But are we really in control? Can we really hold on? And my learning is that change is inevitable. Letting go. Oops. But there's one thing I have to recognize. What I was going to talk about, I did not know till about 5:30 this morning, when I put it together till 6:30, and I'd like to recognize Alenka if she is still here. Because I sent it to her at 6:30, and between 6:30 and 7:30, she made it into a presentation, and 8:30 it was already here. Change is inevitable, and I am not in control, and letting go is the only way. Now, if for a moment you feel that you can hold on to anything that you have, let us do a small exercise together. While you're sitting, sit straight and take a deep breath. Take a deep breath in and hold it as long as you can. How long can you hold? I realized that to be able to take the next breath, I have to first let go of the carbon dioxide that is in my lungs so that I can suck in the oxygen. Over the years, in 2002, we had the floods, and all the restaurants were flooded, and my apartment was totally flooded. Then in 2005, I had a family situation where my older kids, who are now 17 and 19 and living happily in Rome since last year, I did not see them for about 6-7 months. In 2007, my ex-wife was detected at a very advanced stage of spinal cancer, and she had to go through major surgery. And this was when my younger kids were 6 months and 1.5 years old. Then in 2012, I was detected with a major triple slip disc, where the only way of getting out of it was potentially surgery and putting 4 titanium nails inside. And all this while, there was this chatter in my mind. So what am I doing wrong? I am a good person. Why are all these things happening to me? And I am always the victim. And then I realized that I had a beautiful wall, and there was 100 bricks in this wall, and 98 of them were perfectly in place. 2 of them were slightly crooked. And I was focusing all my time and attention on those 2 bricks that were slightly crooked, and I did not notice the 98 bricks that were perfectly in place in my life. And from there, I came to the power of attention. If thoughts were powerful, any thought would be equally powerful for you and for me at all times. That's not the case. Thoughts become powerful when we give them our emotional attachment. We give them power by focusing on them. And this is probably the most important quality we have as human beings. We can really determine our life by focusing our attention on what we think we would like to create. The other thing I learned is our mind is a single track. And what that means is, if, like I had in my mind, if we have the negative chatter going on, why did he do this to me? I will show him how to do that. There is no space for positive thoughts. However, the other way works exactly the same. If we put it on a positive track and have positive thoughts, there is no space for negative thoughts. The mind is not able to shake hands and box somebody at the same time. It is either occupied by positive or by negative thoughts. I will share with you, in 2006, this is the first time I had the good fortune of sitting one-to-one alone with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. He came for a lunch that was in Bellevue, and then he wanted to stay. He didn't feel like going back to Shofin to the Forum 2000 conference. And I spent 2 hours with him, and I asked him a lot of, naive, stupid questions. What do you think about world peace? And in those 2 hours, at least about 20 times or more, he would just say, I don't know, and in a very childish way, ha ha ha, laugh, and that was the end. That was the end of the answer. And then there was silence always for a minute or 2. And I came out of that meeting and I said, if somebody like him can actually say, I don't know, and walk away with it, what's wrong with me? Who's always trying to pretend to my children, to my team, to everybody that I know everything. And I'm trying to cook up things, and I'm trying to cook up answers. And that was such a huge burden off my shoulders, where, the kids would ask something, and I would say, I don't know. And that was the end of the story. Came back to the office, somebody would ask me something, say, I don't know. End of story. And this is where I realized, and always in my life, I was trying to hide my weaknesses and go out and always put the best foot forward and say, how can I present myself as the strongest, as the best, as the know-all? And suddenly I realized that if I can just be myself, if I am vulnerable, then I connect with everybody at a very deep level. Because deep down, everybody is vulnerable. And that connection is not replaceable by anything that I can pretend to do. So vulnerability today, I think, is a strength. And I think if we can be genuine and vulnerable, it is not a weakness. And I think only the strongest can come out openly and talk about their weaknesses. Also from the Dalai Lama, one of the big things that came out was the power of gratitude. This was a man whose people were whatever was being done with them at that point in time. And he came back and he said, I have compassion for the people who are doing it. I understand. I know where they are coming from. And he was grateful for his life and for whatever was happening in his life. And I said, if he can do that, where is my gratitude? And it brought me back to my wall and my 98 bricks. And I learned that if I focus my time and attention on my 98 bricks, I literally don't see those 2 crooked bricks anymore. I also learned that the happiest people do not necessarily have the best of everything. They just make the best of everything they have. While I was lying in bed and recovering from my slip disc, which I didn't go through the operation, I just decided to meditate and get over it. And 4 years later, I can say, I think the body can take care of itself. I also read some material on happiness, and one of the things that I did come across was the research from Harvard, which fundamentally says most of us think, if I go to that vacation, I will be happy. And this is something that Alexander touched upon. If I marry this model girl or boy, if I get that Ferrari, Now, this model is fundamentally broken and backwards because 2 things happen here. This is conditional happiness. While I say this to myself, I am at the same time telling myself that I am not happy as I am. And I will only be happy when a certain event takes place in my life. Happiness is a journey. It's not a destination. 85 to 90% of the happiness is internal to us. Only 10 to 15% maximum can be influenced by events outside of us. The events will probably remain the same. The way we react to those events will determine our happiness. The journey and destination bit, to me, it has kind of become the difference between making a life or just making a living. And I think the distinction is very clear. Of course, a passionate and purposeful life where you are making a difference, sharing creates happiness. And all of this comes out of Harvard research on positive thinking, which is not very old, which is 3-4 years old as we speak today. For the workplace, if you're happy, productivity is shown to go up by 33%, revenue 37%, but look at the big number, creativity. Creativity jumps by 300%. Fortunately for us, happiness is a skill, just like golf or piano, and you can actually practice happiness every day. Be grateful for 3 things, exercise for 15 minutes, meditate for 5 minutes, write a positive message to someone, and the positive message has nothing to do with the someone, it has to do with your psychology and what it does to your psychology. Write down the most meaningful positive experience in the last 24 hours. I'll share with you a story. My daughter, who is now just turned 17 and is now in Rome, they moved last year in July. She came to me with a Christmas break in December, and she was sitting there. We were having dinner, and she was talking, and she said, you know, I have this French teacher. He's like 63. He comes, and his voice is monotonous, exactly in the same tone. And we are supposed to sit there and listen to him for an hour. How can you possibly stay awake? And then there was silence. And after about a minute, she turned around and herself said, he's not teaching me French, is he? He's teaching me patience. And the question is, I think we have teachers all around us. The question is, are we ready to become students? Last couple of items and I will conclude. I think I'm running out of time. We all have large to-do lists. I used to have very big ones. And if doing was so important, then we would be called human doings and not human beings. So I think if we can start to have, maybe I have started to have a to-be list rather than a to-do list. I will close with 2 sayings, one from the famous Urdu poet, Mirza Ghalib. He said, I decided to make my life happier. I decided to forgive some people and ask others for forgiveness. And to conclude, the famous Rumi, the famous Sufi poet, who said, I was knocking on the door of happiness all my life. When the door opened, I realized I was knocking from the inside. Enjoy the journey from a space of opportunity, gratitude, and abundance. Thank you.
Sanjiv Suri.